Hi, my name is Dr. Gaukhar Baidildinova.
This is the start of my lecture series dedicated to evidence-based medicine, which is useful for medical doctors, biomedical researchers, epidemiologists, and pharmacists. This video is about the classification of study types and the hierarchy of evidence. The most basic division is the originality of the research. According to this principle, they are divided into primary and secondary. Primary studies are divided into three categories. First are fundamental studies. The second category is clinical research. The third is epidemiologic. Clinical and epidemiological overlap, and the differences between them are not always distinguished. Secondary research, on the other hand, is the collection and analysis of results obtained in primary experiments. These can be meta-analyses and reviews. Reviews can be systematic and narrative. Basic research is divided into theoretical and applied research. Theoretical in biology often includes bioinformatics. The applied ones include animal, cell, biochemical, and genetic studies. Everything else is different kinds of human studies. The results of all these studies are organized into a hierarchy. I also have 2 paid courses on Udemy. The Critical Assessment of Clinical Studies teaches how to read and critically evaluate clinical studies. It's a very great course. The same as my second course, Scientific Writing, where I tell all the nuances of how to write a scientific article or dissertation. Links are in the description box. This hierarchy is always presented as a pyramid, with expert opinions and media articles at the very base as the most unreliable source of evidence. This means that if you ask an expert about something or read an interview with him in a magazine or newspaper where he gives his opinion rather than broadcasting research results, this is information that you can listen to, but it is not unequivocally the truth in the last instance. The next step in the hierarchy is the results of computer modeling, in silico experiments. This is the great opportunity of our time, to predict protein structure, to find targets for drugs, to study their interaction in the body, or even to try to model the spread of viruses and the development of pandemics. But without experimental evidence, it remains only a fascinating theory. The theory is one thing. How it will actually work is to be tested. Then there are in vitro experiments in a test tube, not in a living body. It is reasonable to observe the cells first rather than immediately injecting substances into an animal or human body. Above them looms research on laboratory animals, in vivo experiments. On the slide, you see the percentage of physiology similarity between popular lab animals and humans based on 38 drug teratogenicity studies. Interestingly, with mice, we share 85% of similarity, in contrast with only 30% with monkeys. Certain drugs have different effects on human and monkey fetuses. For example, aspirin, furosemide, phenobarbital, dioxin, and metronidazole are considered safe for human fetuses. However, these same substances can be harmful to the fetuses of rhesus macaques. On the other hand, aminopterin is known to be teratogenic, or harmful, to human fetuses, but it does not have the same effect on monkeys. This highlights the importance of species differences in drug safety and developmental toxicity studies. Microbiologist Louis Pasteur conducted groundbreaking experiments by infecting dogs, pigs, chickens, rabbits, sheep, cows, and monkeys. His work led to the development of vaccines for anthrax and rabies. In 1921, Canadian physician Frederick Banting made a major discovery in diabetes research. He ligated the ducts of the pancreas in laboratory dogs, which ultimately led to the discovery of insulin, a life-saving treatment for people with diabetes. In 1909, the first white Worcester rats were bred for laboratory research. Today, more than half of all laboratory rats are descendants of that original group. Over time, different rat models have been developed for medical research. These include hypertension models, type 1 diabetes models, obesity-prone Zucker rats, and albino Sprague Dawley rats, which have a higher tendency to develop tumors. Monkeys play a crucial role in research on the immune and nervous systems. They have been used to study AIDS, hepatitis, brain diseases, and organ transplants. Additionally, scientists have developed a monkey model of Huntington's disease, providing valuable insights into this neurodegenerative disorder. These examples are only a few when there are much more. You can see that the step states in vivo and ex vivo experiments. In vivo refers to experiments or procedures conducted within a whole, living organism in its natural state, meaning right within an animal. Ex vivo refers to experiments or procedures performed on tissues or organs outside the living organism but maintaining their biological structure. For example, when blood cells are extracted from a patient or animal, genetically modified in a lab to target cancer, and then reintroduced into the body. The main focus in medicine, however, is on evidence from clinical trials. This pyramid is topped by the highest level of secondary studies, systematic reviews, and meta-analyses. It is important to clarify here that these should be systematic reviews and meta-analyses on randomized clinical trials, not other types of clinical trials, which I will explain in upcoming lectures. As you can see, the opinion of non-specialists is not here at all. This is a very important and obvious point that in various fields, especially in such a complex and requiring deep specific knowledge as medicine, you should not consider the opinion of people with non-specialized education at all. If you hear any recommendations, even on nutrition, vitamins, vaccines, or supplements from some people, often it happens on social networks. The first question you should ask yourself is whether this person has the appropriate education and work experience. Most often, these are bloggers with marketing degrees. Same thing if you're reading the opinions of singers, models, or artists. These are non-specialists. They haven't gone through the vast array of sciences that we biomedical scientists, pharmacists, and clinical physicians study. Of course, nutrition is easier to deal with, but I often heard also absurd recommendations. There are already pranks on this topic from the stars themselves. For example, Anne Hathaway with Clementines on The Ellen Show. I'll leave the link in the description if you haven't seen it. There, Anne tells people to put an orange in their mouths, breathe, and make weird noises, asking if people started to feel better, and then says she made the whole thing up. She concludes with a thought that you shouldn't do something because a celebrity told you to. This is called the halo effect. It is a cognitive bias, where a positive impression of one trait, such as attractiveness or fame, influences the perception of other traits, including honesty or competence. There is a whole movie dedicated to illustrating it, a famous Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio. However, with experts, you also should be cautious. I am not quite experienced with English-speaking Instagram, but it is quite popular among Russian-speaking doctors to have their Instagram pages where they promote themselves, and quite often they also say wrong things because their studies are based on Soviet times protocols, and since these doctors don't speak English and in some cases are frankly stupid, they don't know they are wrong. For example, it is a quite popular opinion that there are no effective antivirals. First, they claim just like this. Then, they can add that there are no effective antivirals against flu or COVID, which is not true. The big layer in the pyramid is for clinical trials. They in turn have their own hierarchy and are usually spelled out together, but I just didn't have enough space on the slide. At the very bottom are case studies and case series descriptions. These are often combined into one category. A notch higher are cross-sectional studies. Then come case control studies. Above them are retrospective cohort studies. Cohort-based but prospective cohorts follow. The bright star on this pyramid is randomized clinical trials under the common abbreviation RCT.